Welcome, folks. I am Jaby Koay, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
What's up, Pete?
So this is just a discussion of the trailer Defy Bloods, the new trailer from Netflix. It's a Spike Lee film, and the reason this is just a discussion and not a trailer reaction is because there is copyright music all throughout that thing, to the point that it's just like, it's not even worth it to try to put that out. It'll just give us a big, massive headache. But I still wanted to talk about it because I think it is worth discussing. Before we roll into talking about what we watched, this is from Netflix's description. From Academy Award winner Spike Lee comes a new joint, the story of 4 African-American vets, Paul Delroy Lindo, Otis Clark Peters, Eddie Norm Lewis, and Melvin Isaiah Whitlock Jr., who returned to Vietnam. Searching for the remains of their fallen squad leader Chadwick Boseman and the promise of buried treasure, our heroes, joined by Paul's concerned son Jonathan Majors, battle forces of man and nature while confronted by the lasting ravages of the immorality of the Vietnam War. Whenever I watch a war film, I always get curious about the minorities that were involved in that war that are not being portrayed. Now, you go back and watch something like Forrest Gump, you do see black people being shown, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, you go back further, there are wars like that involved Indians, for instance, and you don't see Indians in there as much as you should. In 1917, I saw 1 Indian, right, in the entire film. The thing is, it's like you're used to seeing that, and you just think, oh, well, I guess it was just all white people who were fighting in that war. And so here you have a story about 4 black people, and I think that that's cool. I've never seen another war film that was just dealing with the black perspective or black people, except for, and I never watched the film, Red Tails, which is a film that was largely unwatched. It was a George Lucas produced picture. I don't know if it was good or not. George Lucas did mention having a hard time getting it financed because there were no white leads in the film. What did you think of the trailer?
I really enjoyed it. It looks awesome. And like you said, just the sheer fact that it's showing it from the perspective of African Americans, I find that fascinating because, like you said, it's not something that you see a lot of, this
it's uncommon.
Different perspective. I know that the Vietnam War was one of those wars that a lot of people were extremely frustrated about because it felt super pointless.
Right.
And then here you have, you know, a bunch of black guys who were like, yeah, we're fighting for our country and what have they done for us? And then you get that kind of almost like a treasure hunt adventure story as well, which is super cool.
There's a comedic aspect to it that's just inherent, I think, to the adventure, but it's also gonna be met by, like it says, you know, they're battling the ravages of the immorality of the Vietnam War. They're dealing with the memory of the Vietnam War as well.
And I think it's really cool that you're seeing this also as they come back older. And the thing is, Vietnam has changed so much. My family loved to go visit a lot, but from what I heard, like even in the time span of when my dad first went there, which was like the 90s or whatever, was the same as Thailand 30 years before that. So they were like behind us. But then now they're developing at a pace. So to see this story in the 2 perspectives, and I love that they changed the aspect ratio like that as well, because it becomes really clear, like, oh, okay, so this is in the past, and then this is now. And you can see, like, even just in the trailer, it feels more glitzy, there's tourism and bright lights and whatever, whereas back in the 70s, it was just like rice fields. It's completely different. And
I heard it's a brutal war for American soldiers. Like, I mean, we shouldn't have been in that war to begin with, but like, I heard the tactics that the Vietnamese used against the American soldiers was so damn good.
Because they weren't prepared for the guerrilla warfare that they were facing. I guess it was smart on the part of the Vietnamese to kind of use the terrain and their knowledge of it to their advantage. I don't think they had the same amount of guns or tech or whatever as the American army.
Not at all.
So they had to use what they knew. Would this be the first time that America has had to withdraw?
No. I mean, I've only recently learned about it, so I don't know the full extent of it, but I know that America, in much earlier in the American history, tried attacking Canada.
Okay.
And according to some random video I saw in the Canadian history, so it's just one data point. The aspect ratio changing thing is such an interesting thing to me because I remember a friend telling me this idea. He had proposed an idea to me to change aspect ratios in the middle of a story that we were developing together, and I hated that idea. And now you see it all the time. Now it's more commonplace. Wes Anderson did it.
The Grand Budapest Hotel?
Yes, that was a very obvious aspect ratio change. And that's not the first time they've done it. They've done it in other films. There's a Christopher Walken film that's all about virtual reality, where you could record your memories and stuff like that.
Okay.
And they did it aspect ratio changes in that film as well to like give you a sense of what was inside the mind and what, you know, whatever. And so here they're doing it to signify the difference in time, right? So the actual Vietnam era is more of like that box format, the 4:3 aspect ratio, and the more modern format is the widescreen. What's also neat about this is that you have these veteran actors, these older actors, and there's not that many stories like you. It's one thing,
I was gonna say that too.
It's one thing to have a story about that's like a predominantly black cast, but now you have predominantly older black cast, and I'm like, wow. Like I can't think of too many films that do that. I mean, there's not that many films, let alone that explore the trials and tribulations of older people.
Yeah.
Right. You do see those, but an older black cast is like even more interesting. I'm like, oh yeah, like that. Yeah, we need more of that. We need that kind of stuff.
Netflix has kind of been, I think, trailblazing in that regard because they have that successful show. Is it Grace and Frankie?
Yeah,
I don't know if
I
I've
don't know.
got the names flip-flopped. I thought that was awesome too because, like you said, you don't really see that much content out there that is aimed towards an older generation.
Regarding the adventure of the older gentleman in this movie, it's interesting because the whole thing is about getting this almost like Shawshank Redemption or something like that, you know, with the whole thing is about getting that treasure. You can understand why someone would go to those lengths to go and acquire that. It's quite early in the morning, so forgive me. What I'm unclear about is while they're going to get that treasure, do they encounter violence again, like they're thrust into battle again just to get this treasure, even as older people?
I think so. Jean Reno is some sort of Don in Vietnam, and so now they have to contend with him.
Is he the same actor who played the professional? I just got a little bit confused as to whether the violence they were showing was all flashbacks or if there was something they were encountering today, because it could just be like that they're wrestling with matters of the mind as they navigate these, this terrain again.
Yeah, and I mean, the Vietnam War was a pretty gruesome war, and I know that a lot of veterans probably still suffer from PTSD from that. They're that older generation that probably didn't even know what PTSD was.
Right. One of the reasons I think that this is important, and the movie I imagine will explore the system to some degree, is that African Americans over here were facing being marginalized, being systematically oppressed, and then they go and fight this war, and then they come back and they're still dealing with those problems.
Yeah.
They fought this war for their country and then come back and they're still being oppressed. I can't imagine what that must have been like, what that must have felt like, how infuriating, frustrating, disheartening that is, and how that would just make you feel as a human being. I think that the story potentially gives you the opportunity to see that from their perspective, not only in their youth, but also like looking back on that and just hearing them talk about, like, I'm just so curious about this story. It's different. It's just different from what we usually get. At least with regards to war stories, you're dealing with them in their later years. It's not so much about them in their youth going into battle, but it's more about reflecting on that and dealing with the persisting trauma that's in their minds while trying to also get treasure. I mean, that's just an interesting premise. I'm down for it.
Me too.
I'm glad Chadwick Boseman attached himself to this project.
That's just pretty smart because obviously he's the one with the most star power on here. And so that's just gonna pique the interest of a lot of people across different generations. And then, it's just gonna get more eyes on it.
You guys, thanks so much for hanging out. Hopefully you enjoyed that discussion. Be sure to check out ACHARA, KIRK, and myself on the social media, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that bell icon, all notifications, please. That helps us out so you get notified every time we drop something.